Frederic Niles had no idea how many alien eyes were watching him when he bolted out of the shuttle. "Run!" he shouted behind him, sprinting across the cold, metallic platform of what he assumed was a laboratory. His heart pounded in his chest like a jackhammer, and his breath came fast and hard. The emergency beacon had gone off only minutes earlier. A warning blared in multiple frequencies through the airlock corridor. He didn't speak the language, but any species with alarms that loud clearly wanted everyone moving. He ducked behind a towering cylinder humming with energy, pressing his back to it, as three tall figures glided past. One of them paused, its translucent skin shimmering faintly under the overhead lights, before continuing on. Frederic peeked out. Nothing. He stepped forward carefully, one boot scraping against the floor. Subject 49F. A voice echoed from above. It was flat, mechanical, and came from nowhere. Return to the observation deck. Your physiological stress response has exceeded safe thresholds. He looked around. I'm not a subject, I'm a guest. And yeah, I'm stressed. There was an explosion, a hiss to his right. He turned, fists clenched. A panel slid open and a creature emerged. It stood at least a foot taller than him, its features unreadable, its arms too long for comfort. Subject 49F. No explosion occurred. The containment valve failed during a routine pressure purge. You are unharmed. Frederic exhaled, heart still hammering. You call that routine? I nearly wet myself. The alien approached slowly, tapping a handheld device. Your cardiac rhythm remains elevated. 184 beats per minute. You are in cardiovascular distress. It's adrenaline, Frederic said, waving a hand. It's cool. The alien paused. Adrenaline. Yeah, you know, fight or flight hormone. Dangerous stuff in large doses, but useful for not dying in a panic. The creature blinked if that's what the ripple across its eye membrane meant. Your species floods its bloodstream with a chemical that accelerates cardiac function in life-threatening moments. Yup, and this is safe. Frederic leaned against the wall. Not exactly, but it's what we've got. The alien turned and gestured. Another door hissed open. Come, you will explain. He followed, limping slightly. His shin throbbed where he'd clipped it during the sprint, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. The corridor they entered was a tube of light and glass. Through the transparent walls, he saw other aliens sleek, pale, and eerily quiet moving between workstations. Some glanced at him. Others just kept working, their limbs making slow, deliberate gestures over floating interfaces. He was led into a circular chamber. At its center stood a platform surrounded by curved monitors. Four aliens sat around it, all focused on him. This is Frederic Niles, the first alien said. Terran male, subject of recent cardiovascular anomaly. Hey, Frederic said, raising his hand. Still alive, by the way. One of the seated aliens leaned forward. You experienced a heart rate of 184 beats per minute. This is incompatible with long-term survival in most known species. Yeah, it's not great if it sticks around. But it was temporary. You ran. You shouted. You exhibited aggressive posturing. I thought I was about to die. But you weren't. Didn't know that at the time. The aliens exchanged glances. One tapped a panel. A hologram of Frederic's body appeared, his heart highlighted in red, pulsing rapidly. This is unhealthy, the alien said. I agree. That's why we don't do it for fun. You were not injured? He hesitated. My leg's banged up, but I can walk. The alien stood and motioned. Medical scan. Immediately. He sighed. Fine. They moved him to a diagnostic bed, where beams passed over him. A soft chime sounded. Fracture detected in the tibia, one of the aliens announced. Really? Frederic blinked. It just felt bruised. You ran on a fractured bone, another said. Yeah, well, adrenaline. Again, the aliens exchanged looks. One of them finally muttered, Your species is extremely hazardous to itself. Tell me about it, Frederic said, wincing as a brace wrapped around his leg. A moment later, the door hissed open again. A smaller alien entered. Its skin was a deeper violet hue, and it wore no visible tools. It studied Frederic with wide, unblinking eyes. This is Rilu, the first alien said. Behavioral analyst. Rilu walked up to him and tilted its head. Why did you run? There was a noise and a pressure blast. I thought I was in danger. You chose escape over freezing. Yeah. Why? Frederic shrugged. It's instinct. We evolved that way. Rilla turned to the others. He did not process the environment fully. He reacted based on oral and tactile inputs. His species favors rapid response over analytical delay. That's how you survive when you're not the top of the food chain. Rilla nodded. I understand. Do you? Rilla gestured. A new display appeared, showing heart rate graphs of various species. Most stayed within a narrow band, even under stress. The human graph spiked violently, dipped, then spiked again. You are volatile, Rilla said. We are adaptable. Or unstable. Bit of both. They kept him under observation for 2 days. During that time, they ran simulations, loud noises, flashing lights, sudden air pressure changes. Every time, Frederic's heart rate jumped. You still haven't explained how this doesn't kill you, one of the aliens said. It can, Frederic replied. But usually it doesn't. Our bodies are built to handle short bursts of extreme conditions. It's what kept us alive back when we were pretty low on the food chain. And now it keeps us alive when alien labs explode. There was a long pause before one of the scientists said, "We are not finished." They introduced new variables. On the 3rd day, they simulated a fire. Not a real one, just the sensory cues. Heat, smoke scent, flickering lights. Frederic's heart rate surged again. He gritted his teeth and didn't move. Rilla watched from a monitor. You resisted the urge to flee. I figured it wasn't real. But your body still reacted. Yeah, it always does. And you accepted the discomfort? Because I knew it wasn't a threat. The aliens were quiet for a moment. Then Rilla asked, do you experience this often? Not every day, but often enough. Why? Frederic looked away. Life's dangerous. Accidents, crime, war, natural disasters. You never know what's coming. So your species lives in a constant state of readiness? Some more than others. The aliens took notes. A few murmured quietly, their tones unreadable. He didn't like the way they looked at him, like a puzzle with too many pieces missing. That night, as he lay on the xenobe with a dull ache in his leg, Rilla entered again. You're awake. Yeah. Hard to sleep with all the humming. Rilla sat beside him. Your kind fascinates us. We're not trying to be fascinating. You survive by enduring chaos. You thrive where most species would perish. But you do so at great cost to your own biology. Yeah, Frederic said, closing his eyes. That's the deal. Rilla sat in silence for a moment. We want to test another scenario. He opened one eye. What kind? Controlled fear. Induced through neural stimulation. Will it hurt? It will replicate the emotional response of imminent death. He sat up. That sounds worse than pain. You may decline. He looked at his leg. I'm not running anywhere. Fine. Just don't overdo it. The following morning, they strapped a small device to his temple. Rilla stood nearby, monitoring a terminal. Begin stimulation. Frederic inhaled sharply. His heart rate spiked immediately. He felt the sudden, unshakable certainty that something terrible was about to happen. His palms sweated. His throat tightened. He gripped the sides of the chair. Okay, he gasped. This is real. This feels real. Describe it. I feel like I'm going to die. But nothing's happening. Hold. His vision blurred. His chest ached. Stop, Rilla said. The feeling vanished instantly. Frederic sagged in the chair, gasping. That's not fun. Rilla approached. Yet you endured it. Barely. Your heart rate peaked at 209. That's probably a record for me. Why did you not faint? I don't know. I wanted to. But I didn't. The room fell silent again. Rilla finally said, your species is more than volatile. You are. Resistant. Yeah, he murmured. We kind of have to be. There were no more tests that day. They let him sleep. Frederic woke to a rhythmic chirping that wasn't part of any alarm he recognized. The room was dim, bathed in a soft green hue from the strip of bioluminescent moss embedded in the ceiling. He sat up slowly, ankle wrapped in a polymer brace that had hardened overnight. The air smelled faintly like boiled kelp. Good morning, came Rilu's voice from the intercom. You are required in the adaptation chamber. Required? You gonna ask me nicely, or just drag me? There was a pause. We assumed compliance. Then you haven't spent enough time around humans. Another pause. Then a gentle click as the door unsealed. Two of the tall, pale attendants waited outside. Their names were unintelligible to Frederic, so he'd mentally labeled them Lefty and Other Lefty. They didn't speak. They just guided him down a corridor that curved so subtly he didn't realize it was circular until they passed the same floating sculpture of a spinning, asymmetrical ring of water for the 3rd time. Your architecture is confusing, he muttered. Neither replied. They reached the adaptation chamber. It was darker than the other rooms he'd seen so far, and colder. The walls were matte black with strips of faint blue light tracing slow pulses along the seams. Rilla stood at the center beside a low bench made of something that shimmered like thick ice but felt warmer when Frederic touched it. "This isn't another fear test, is it?" he asked, eyeing a series of overhead cables retracting into the ceiling. "No. We are studying your recovery speed." "From what?" Rilla motioned to a tray. On it were several items: a sealed vial of amber fluid, a shallow bowl of something pasty and white, and a narrow band with pale nodes along the inner rim. "We want to observe your response to controlled exertion, followed by ingestion of replenishing substances. Your species is unique in its capacity to recover function after physical trauma without external regeneration." Frederic frowned. "You want me to work out on a broken leg?" "Limited exertion. Monitored. You will wear the regulator to mitigate instability. How about I just take a nap and we call it a draw?" "That would not yield usable data." He sighed, then pointed to the amber vial. "What's that?" "Glucose analog, calibrated to your metabolic baseline." "And the paste?" "Protein hybrid, synthesized from non-sentient aquatic biomatter. Flavorless. Efficient. Appetizing." He took the band and fitted it over his temples. It adjusted automatically, tightening just enough to be annoying. The moment it locked in place, a cool sensation spread down the back of his neck. His leg brace buzzed faintly. "Begin movement," Rilla said. A section of floor lit up in front of him, 3 meters long, half as wide. The lights glowed red. "What am I supposed to do?" "Walk laps. Move until the lights change." "Great." He limped forward. The first step was awkward, the second worse. By the third, the brace adapted its tension, and his stride evened out. The red light turned orange. "How long is this going to last?" "Until you reach threshold fatigue." "Define threshold." "Until your neural signals indicate deterioration of voluntary muscle control." "Cool." By the 5th lap, his shirt clung to him. He hadn't realized until then that the air in the room was getting warmer. He started to sweat. The orange lights turned yellow. "Still not green," he muttered. "Continue." By lap 11, his arms ached, and his injured leg was beginning to throb under the brace. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and kept going. The yellow lights pulsed, then shifted to green. He stopped. "Is that it?" "Yes. Now ingest the glucose." Frederic picked up the vial and sniffed it. It smelled faintly like maple syrup and metal. He downed it in one gulp. It burned slightly on the way down. "Now the protein." He hesitated. "You're sure this isn't made from something sentient?" "Statistically impossible." "Comforting." The paste had the consistency of mashed tofu and less flavor than cardboard. He gagged once but got it down. Rilu gestured for him to sit. Monitor displays elevated lactate levels. Muscle fiber stress within acceptable margins. Cardiac rhythm normalizing. Feels like I ran through wet cement with a crowbar lodged in my thigh. Pain levels. Frederic flexed his foot. Manageable. Recovery timeline predicted under 30 minutes. "You're saying I'll be fine in half an hour?" "Your species' metabolic elasticity is notable." Elasticity is a generous word. Rilla stared at the data feed. "You depleted and recovered glycogen reserves in under 25 minutes. This is not typical. It is if you grow up playing sports with no supervision and terrible hydration." Rilla looked up. "You voluntarily engage in extreme physical activity as entertainment?" "Sometimes competitively. Sometimes just to avoid thinking." Rilla blinked slowly. "That explains certain anomalies in your cardiovascular patterns." A panel in the wall opened. An arm extended from it, holding a transparent cube filled with small, irregular objects. "What now?" "Cognitive stress trial. Pattern recognition under fatigue." Frederic groaned. "You're stacking tests now?" "Multivariable analysis is more efficient." He took the cube. Inside were dozens of tiny shapes: triangles, hexagons, and irregular polyhedra, all floating freely in a magnetic field. Each had a faint etching across one face. "Match all symbols to orientation markers," Rilu said. "Do I get a manual?" "No." He stared at the pieces. They rotated slowly, lazily bumping into each other. He reached in, fingertips grazing cool surfaces. As he turned one shape, a faint click echoed through the room. "Okay. That did something. Continue." He worked through the cube, matching symbols to shapes. Some were intuitive arrows, curves, angles. Others made no sense. He tried two that seemed compatible, and the cube buzzed softly. Wrong. Great, he muttered. He kept going. The more he handled the shapes, the faster his hands moved. His breathing evened out. The dull ache in his leg faded slightly. After 7 minutes, the cube chimed. Trial complete, Rilla said. Frederic set the cube down. Can I nap now? Soon. First, we require one more sample. A drawer opened beside him. Inside was a narrow cylinder with a detachable cap. You want my spit? No. Sweat. He raised an eyebrow. Seriously? You excrete fluid containing measurable stress indicators. We wish to examine composition under post-exertion conditions. He shrugged and pressed the cylinder to his neck. It extracted a bead of perspiration with a small hiss. Thanks for making me feel like a damp rag. Rilla took the sample. Your sodium loss is significant. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to hydrate before your little obstacle course. We will provide replenishment. A moment later, a small capsule was handed to him. It fizzed when it hit his tongue and tasted like sour celery. Better than the paste, at least. Rilla didn't respond. Instead, he watched Frederic's vitals scroll across the monitor. You are stabilizing faster than anticipated. I've got a stubborn circulatory system. You were subjected to acute physical exertion, nutritional deprivation, stress stimuli, and cognitive load within 90 minutes. You forgot the terrible protein paste. Yet your neurological markers are within baseline. That is not common. Frederic leaned back. You're starting to sound impressed. Rilla tilted his head. We are. Your species operates at an efficiency we previously associated with synthetic organisms. Great. Tell that to my niece. Later, Frederic was returned to his room. The lights were lower than before, pulsing faintly with slow waves of blue. He lay on the xenobe, eyelids drooping. Just as he started to drift off, the wall lit up with a soft chime. Tomorrow, Rilla's voice said, we will begin environmental adaptation trials. Frederic groaned into his pillow. I miss chairs. And potato chips. There was no reply, just the gentle, persistent hum of alien curiosity. Frederic stood on a narrow platform suspended over what looked like a shallow lake of viscous translucent liquid. The chamber was wide, circular, and completely silent except for the quiet ripple of the fluid below. He rubbed at his neck where the heat from the previous session's regulator band had left a faint mark. This new chamber smelled faintly like citrus and wet stone. Rilla stood 10 feet away, holding a long, curved device that projected a slow-spinning hologram of the chamber. This simulation mimics the thermal variance and atmospheric pressure of a mid-altitude volcanic basin. Frederic narrowed his eyes at the ceiling. You built a fake volcano to see if I'd faint. To study your adaptation to fluctuating environments without prior conditioning. Right? So a surprise volcano. You will remain on the platform. The conditions will change progressively. Movement is optional, but encouraged. I'm not much of a lava dancer, if that's what this is. There is no lava. Small mercies. The lights dimmed. Overhead, hidden vents hissed open, releasing plumes of gas that smelled faintly sulfuric. A low hum started vibrating through the floor under his boots. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The air thickened immediately, pressing against his lungs like warm syrup. Sweat broke along his forehead. Rilla adjusted a setting on the device. Ambient temperature is increasing by 2 degrees every 60 seconds. Barometric pressure will rise in tandem. Frederic took another step. You ever try human hot yoga? This is basically that, minus the incense and existential dread. The platform trembled slightly. He crouched, touching it with his fingers. You've got heating elements under here? Subsurface thermal gradients. Simulated through magnetic oscillation. Feels like I'm standing on a griddle. You will inform us when discomfort exceeds tolerability. I'll scream. He moved slowly, stretching his legs as he walked the length of the platform. His breathing grew shallower, but steady. Within 10 minutes, the air was dense enough that each step left him dizzy for a moment. He bent forward, hands on his knees. Cognitive impairment? Rilla asked. Just winded. Rilla tapped the device. A second vent hissed. The smell of minerals thickened. The ambient light turned a deep amber. Frederic blinked against sweat stinging his eyes. I'm feeling like a poached egg, if you're looking for metaphors. Your body temperature has increased by 1.2 degrees. Heart rate, 146. Still within expected range. He coughed once, shook out his arms, and kept pacing. His shirt was soaked through now. The surface beneath his boots was sticky, not slippery, but every movement took more effort. You want me to collapse? Or just see if I can keep moving until I pass out? Neither. We are observing how your body compensates under dual stressors without external aid. Then tell me when I win. Completion occurs when the chamber reaches equilibrium. 7 minutes remain. Frederic muttered something under his breath and started jogging in place. It hurt. His calves protested. His back itched with sweat, but the distraction helped him ignore the pounding in his chest. After another minute, he stopped suddenly and dropped to a crouch. His vision tunneled. Pause the simulation, Rilla said. The haze in the room thinned. A cool mist sprayed from the ceiling. Frederic stayed crouched, panting. His skin was flushed, but he was upright. You did not collapse, Rillu observed. Came close. You experienced partial syncope. Yeah, I nearly blacked out. That's what happens when you overheat someone and squeeze the air out of the room. But you recovered function within 24 seconds. Because I've done this before. Not here, but similar. Explain. Frederic sat fully down on the platform. I used to work construction in Nevada. Middle of summer. Asphalt fumes, no shade. One guy passed out every third day. You learn to breathe shallow and move slow. Rilla leaned slightly forward. This is common. It's illegal now. Wasn't always enforced. Rilla looked at the tablet. Your species permits voluntary exposure to hostile conditions for economic gain? Yeah, you do what you have to. The chamber cooled rapidly. The mist faded. Frederic exhaled and lay back against the platform, arms spread. You have a high tolerance for heat-induced vasodilation. I've got a high tolerance for a lot of things. Doesn't mean I like it. Yet you did not request termination of the trial. I figured if I could make it through Nevada, I could make it through this. Rilla stepped closer. You refer often to prior experiences as frameworks for survival. This pattern suggests learned resilience. Yeah, that's kind of the human thing. We remember how bad something was and use it as proof we can survive worse. You are training yourselves through suffering. That's one way to put it. A long silence followed. Rilla glanced at the readout. No tissue damage. Dehydration level moderate. Neurological function stable. Frederic pushed himself to a sitting position again. So I passed. You endured. That is sufficient. Do I get a towel at least? A small panel opened beside the platform, dispensing a folded cloth. Frederic wiped his face, then his arms. The cloth smelled faintly like eucalyptus. Fancy. We synthesized it from your preferred comfort stimuli. Wait, you've been cataloging my scent responses too? Only passively. He stood, slowly. So what's next? Simulated zero oxygen? Gravity reversal? You gonna stick me in a room with a giant spider to measure terror? No further trials are needed. Frederic blinked. Really? We have reached a conclusion. He stepped off the platform and stretched his shoulders. And, you are not designed for survival. He raised an eyebrow. Thanks. But you choose it anyway. Repeatedly. Against logic. Against pain. Without guarantee. He pulled the towel around his neck. It's not about design. It's about momentum. Once we start, we don't stop unless we have to. Rilla looked down at the monitor. Your species embraces discomfort as a condition of progress. Discomfort's just the price of getting somewhere else. Rilla powered off the console. You may return to your quarters. As they walked back through the now familiar curved corridors, Rilla didn't speak. Neither did Frederic. The silence wasn't awkward. It was worn in, like the quiet after a long day when the work was done and nothing needed explanation. Back in his room, the lights were low and cool. The xenobe had been replaced with something closer to a cot, with layers of breathable mesh. He lay down, sighing as the material adapted to the contours of his back. Before the door closed behind Rillu, Frederic sat up. So are you going to keep studying humans? No. We have enough data. Then what was all this for? To understand. Not just your biology. Your function. He leaned back again. And what's the verdict? That you are not efficient. But you are astonishing. Frederic chuckled. I'll take it. The door sealed shut. He let his eyes close. No alarms. No trials. No humming vents or flashing lights. Just cool air and the ache of used muscles. For once, he didn't dream.